Palm Sunday. One day, Jesus was outside the city of Jerusalem with his disciples. He was preparing to enter the city in a very special way. Instead of walking in like most people, Jesus was going to ride in on a donkey. But before he could do this, he needed a donkey. So he gave his disciples some instructions. "Go to the village ahead of you," Jesus told the disciples, "and at once you will find a donkey tied there. The donkey will have her colt beside her. Untie the donkey and bring it to me." One of the disciples was bothered by this. "But what if the owner asks us what we're doing taking his donkey without even asking?" he asked. "How will we explain ourselves?" "Just tell the owner that the Lord needs the donkey, and he will understand," said Jesus. So the disciples went into the village, and sure enough, there was a donkey with its foal beside it. The disciples started to untie the donkey, when suddenly the owner appeared. "Hey," he shouted, "what do you think you're doing?" "The Lord needs it," explained the other disciple. "Oh, that's all right then," said the man. He already knew how wonderful Jesus was, so he was very pleased to be able to give his donkey. He smiled as he watched the two disciples lead the animal away. It was such a privilege to be able to give something for Jesus. Now here's a special secret to do with donkeys. It was no accident that Jesus chose one to ride into Jerusalem. A long, long time before Jesus was born, a prophet of the Lord, whose name was Zechariah, said that one day the king of Israel would ride into Jerusalem on a donkey. Zechariah also said that this king would be meek and humble, just like Jesus. Another special secret about the donkey was that it had never had anyone ride it before. But when Jesus sat on it, it didn't buck or jump or try and shake him off. And Jesus rode towards Jerusalem calmly, with the donkey behaving like a donkey who had been ridden many times. And some of the people came out and began to gather to welcome him. Soon, the whole city was gathered to watch Jesus. Some people wondered who he was, but others already knew. "He's a prophet from Nazareth," they said. Many people cut branches off of palm trees and waved them about, while others threw sheets and clothes on the road, and others clapped their hands and shouted. But not everyone was happy about what Jesus was doing. Some of the priests and leaders started to grumble. "That man's not a king," they complained. "How dare these people shout praises to him?" "Hosanna!" shouted the people. "Hosanna to God in the highest! Long live the Messiah who comes in the name of the Lord! Hail to you, King of Israel!" Jesus rode right through the gate and then on up the street, towards the huge and beautiful Jewish temple. It was where many people came to worship God, to pray and to confess their sins. This was the heart of the whole Jewish nation, and Jesus also called it his Father's house. Jesus got off the donkey and walked into the temple, but instead of finding people praying or worshipping, he found a marketplace. There were men sitting about with animals to sell, and there were tables with money to change, and the floor was a mess, and the smell of animals was strong, and Jesus became angry. He couldn't see anyone behaving as they should behave in God's house. Everywhere he looked, he saw greediness and cheating, and buying and selling just like outside on the streets where all the shops were. It was quite the wrong way to behave in God's house. He also saw that the people who had taken over the temple were interested in making money rather than serving God. Their hearts had grown fat with greed, and they clutched bags of money as they waited for the next customer. At last, Jesus could take no more of this insult. He reached for some rope and began to swing it round like a whip. He ran towards the greedy people and began to turn over their tables and chase their animals out of the temple. "It is written," said Jesus loudly, "my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you've made it into a den of thieves." The dust flew, pots broke, animals ran here and there as Jesus swung his whip about. But not one person dared to argue with Jesus, because they all knew that he was right. The Pharisees and other leaders, who were supposed to be in charge of the temple, felt guilty and angry. They knew they should have stopped all the buying and selling in the temple. But they loved money as well. Now they began to grumble. "We must kill this man," they said to each other. And one other thing that really annoyed the priests and leaders was the way the children loved Jesus. When Jesus had finished clearing the temple, many children started to shout praises to him. "Hosanna to the Son of David," they cried. "How dare they," said the priests and leaders. But Jesus knew what these men were grumbling about. He turned to them and said, "Have you never read, out of the mouth of young children and babies, God has given strength?" What did Jesus mean by this? Jesus meant that the children understood who he was, but the grown-ups were the ones who did not. I wonder, do you understand who Jesus is? Jesus is the Son of God. Jesus is God, the Messiah. If Jesus came riding into your town today, or your city, would you go to welcome him? Would he be your king? This story came from the Free Bible Images website, which you can check out. It's a great website with lots of resources there if you want to find other stories. I have a question for you. In the story, it says that Jesus is meek and humble. Do you know what these words are? Maybe you might think of what are they the opposite of. Have a chat with your parents or those in the room with you at the moment about what they think the words mean. And can you remember what they cried out to Jesus? They cried out a word, Hosanna, in praise of him. Now, if you have a little look on this YouTube page at my playlists here, which looks like that, then you will find a playlist called Easter. And in there I've got lots of different songs and things for you to listen to. If you check out the Easter playlist, then on that you'll find some songs called Hosanna. There's an example of one there by Hillsongs. Have a little listen to what they say, because they tell the story all about Easter and Palm Sunday. And while you're there are lots of other channels on my playlists there that you can check out. Lots of other things on the Easter one with the following Easter stories, and there's some dance videos as well, so do check those out, and thank you for coming.